I was saying this, glad to see everybody here. This is a committee meeting, however, it's not a public forum, so I don't want you to be, you know, the committee's the one that'll be speaking, and it's, but it is an open meeting. So that being said, we put on our agenda that there may be some discussion, and a couple of you mentioned, and I think Doug wanted to say a few things as well.
Go first?
Well, I don't know, you said you might want to say something.
No, and this is for everybody, not just the committee, but after the meeting last week, can't remember what date I was now, but, what was it?
Thursday.
Thank you. I felt really good about the fact, one, that it was such a good discussion that I described it as feeling very Norman Rockwellian, if that's the right word, only because everybody said their piece, everybody listened, everybody paid attention. It was just very good and open and honest, I thought. All the facts were given, the feedback was given and heard. I just thought it felt very, very good. And the interesting thing is that the most, I thought, compelling point was that the only real issue other than the evaluations that was discussed, which doesn't necessarily pertain to this, was when. It wasn't whether or not to do it. I thought that was an enormous shift in public opinion over the last 10 years. We would not have had that discussion 10 years ago. That to me was the massive change in public opinion. So I want to thank the community for that.
And I wanted to thank the community for their involvement and feedback. I've had numerous calls and contacts. And usually, being a board member on 2 different boards, I don't hear from the public, so I get to thinking that they're not interested, but they are interested, and I would commend them for that interest.
Okay. If there's anything in open that the committee wants to discuss or discuss openly, and then we would be taking a vote this evening as to the timing, or if it would be placed on the spring ballot. So I'll just leave it to you guys to discuss. Or
well, I've got a issue that, well, it's not really an issue. I visited with, after the meeting the other night, there was a question that was asked about deficit spending for District 95. And we have a paper here, which this paper, the other 6 of you, I'm fairly sure didn't get this because this was a paper that was handed out at the, it was part of the Financial Committee, some of the documents that were used. And in talking to, and I talked to Mark one-on-one and talked to Marlon. I'll have to apologize to you, Doug. I didn't get a chance to get in to the bank and talk to you. But the answer was there wasn't any deficit spending. And I don't know, at that point of the discussion, in the back of my mind, I remembered this paper here that had been handed out. And to my fault, and I'll admit that I didn't do my homework here. As you can see, if you look down there, there's $84,659 in parentheses that shows a deficit in the ed fund. But actually, when you go and act and subtract the actual expenses from the actual revenue, we see that that deficit is $1,547,390. And then going a little bit further, I asked for some information to get copies of the budgets, and there was a statement of affairs, which is a document that your auditor gives you. Generally, it's in October, so this is generated from District 95's auditor for the 11-12 school year. And just looking in here, there was a $624,073 deficit in the ed fund. And I guess in sharing my concerns with Mark and Marla, currently with the July 1st Treasurer's Report for District 95, it shows a fund balance of $1,800,000. I guess what the concerns are, that if the budget deficit continues at the same rate, with looking at your reserves, and looking how you designate your state aid in your budget, you can take, I think you still have $1,100,000 some dollars that could shift from O&M and transportation into your ed fund to help with your ed fund balances, but barring new revenue from increased state aid, more students, higher EAV, versus cut in expenses. I know that you've looked at everything that it takes, but to get the kind of significant cut that would it take to keep your ed fund from, actually going to a deficit itself, I think you'd be looking at reduction in staff. So I guess with that in mind, we're actually coming asking for a postponement of this vote. The three of us are. Now, this was an official committee because we weren't allowed to meet as a committee, so we met one-on-one. And because of this new information, we would just like to go back over and examine the financial information and make sure that everything is right.
Can I speak to that? And I got Annie here as our office manager too. When we budget, in our budget, we ordinarily put more into the transportation, we lose state aid, so it can show a deficit in the ed fund. And what we've heard is we're spending into our reserves. We are not spending our reserves. In fact, this year's budget, even in our ed fund, we projected, what was the initial of expenditures over revenue? We always project our revenue fairly low. We project our expenditures a little higher, counting summer school in, all of those other good things. We get new monies, and we do every year, like Title I monies. Anna, how much did we just get?
We got $171,000 today.
For our special ed. We won't even have a deficit in our budget for our ed fund this year. We will be balanced in our ed fund. We were projecting more than that. So the deficit on the working document just means at the end of the year, your financial reports, what you really need to look at is where's
Yes.
the money.
Well,
Because we still have over $3 million in reserves that have not been touched. $1 million of that will go to QZAC.
yes. Well, I am just using documents that you generated.
Right.
This figure here was generated, all this was generated from your office.
I guess what I'm telling you though is that does not mean we have one checking account and the money moves from the, different line items.
I
That
understand.
we could project a deficit. We did not end up with an overall deficit that we're eating away at reserves, and we've built our budget that way for
Well,
ever.
but this statement of affairs here from 10/11 shows 624. This right here is from your auditor showing $624,000 deficit in your ed fund.
Now, what one are you looking at, Ann?
11, 12.
But she's got it in her hand.
11, 12?
Yep.
That's
Right.
2011, that's 12.
11, 12, is that what you're looking at?
Mhm.
And what's it saying?
Mine says June 30th, 2012.
It says 107,000, I don't know why, 800 in the ed fund.
No, we're not talking about funds. We're talking about excess of receipts over revenues.
That's what I'm looking at.
Well, the line right underneath that shows 624,073.
Not on page 4.
Page 3.
Well,
Page
you have to
4
move on to
is
page
what
4.
we're
We are not operating an overall, we have deficits in funds. We have never, by the end of the year, we have a balanced budget. This year, we even have a balance. There's no reason for us to say that we're doing better than we are. We have not eaten into reserves. We do have the money put back for QZAB and about 2.1 million still in reserves that have been there for the last 12, 13 years.
I will just say that according to your budget that you get, you started out on the line in your, this is 10th of September, 12th, you show an estimated fund balance of $3,478,217. In your budget that you just passed recently, you show $1,826,209. I mean, that's $1,600,000 and some $1,000 less.
I don't know, Anna needs to go get the figures. I guess that the thing is, our budget goes through our auditors. The budget is a working document.
I'll agree. It's
Okay.
one day in
And
time.
it changes, and when the end of the year comes, we end up with a balanced budget. We always project in the ed fund, because that's where most of your expenditures, sometimes we have to amend and move money over. Last year, we didn't even move our working cash into the ed fund. So we've had 2 years of working cash, and I mean, you can do what you want as far as a vote, but the district, it's
Yeah.
not going to change that the district, that our budget's not in dire straits. And we're still talking about whichever ballot we're going to, so we can not argue the fact that if you're saying that eventually districts will be in trouble, but right now, we've not had to touch a bit of reserves for,
Well, I understand you still have reserves, but
okay.
this right here, this figure shows that you spent $1 million.
We may have spent in one fund that then we have to
In the ed
amend and
fund.
move, because we put more money into transportation or into
Right.
O&M,
I understand.
but we move back out. We usually leave our ed fund a little bit shorter. So that's the way we budget, because we know that, so I don't, it all ends up being in the black.
Our beginning
Well,
fund
yeah.
balance is an unaudited figure also.
Exactly. And then you have your auditors come in and they adjust those balances and,
And that's what the
Well,
annual financial report is.
how do you reckon- How do you explain this? I mean, this is what you handed out to us, that, I mean, it shows a deficit. I mean, when you look at the actual figures, you spent more than what
in
you
the
taken in.
ed fund.
Yes, I'm not arguing about the other funds.
But when
And I
we,
understand what you're saying about you can move money around, because if you take the money out of your O&M and your transportation fund and put in your ed fund, that,
but
you know,
we
changes
chose to
the
put the
revenue.
money there, knowing we might have a surplus there. So we just moved it. See what I'm saying? That's just a budgeting method. Has nothing to do with the shape our district's in. So
Well,
when we amend and move the money back, or put it back in the ed fund, we don't, that's just our way we've always budgeted. It's the way our budgets have always looked. We're
So
not
you did-
looking at layoffs, we're not, I'm,
But if you go back and look, even the 15, the 1.5 million, when you go through and you add the total funds up, and we're not talking about adding the capital projects, versus last year to the year before, I mean, you have 700 and some thousand less than what you had the year
We didn't get
before.
any ARA money.
right. And the only reason was because we got federal ARA money that doesn't come anymore. But that's, and we had
We can manage it
targeted
this
money
time.
for that, but that's not going to, we made adjustments in what we need to do since we're not getting that money.
Well,
I mean, I don't know what that, you can do, if the committee decides to defer the vote, that's your, but that further just makes the case that maybe an eventual consolidation will come, but I don't know what that has to do with fall or spring.
well, I think it has everything to do with going back and actually going through and getting some answers on some of these questions for the finances.
Finance committee has all these reports.
Right.
The,
You had all of those reports?
actually, these budgets were,
I guess-
Marla went online and printed hers out. I just saw the budget for the first time Monday and Tuesday. There are some questions about your levy, or not your levy, but excuse me, the budget that you just filed, concerning expenses. We don't have time to get those questions answered and still be able to put this.
What would answering those questions?
That further makes the case to put this
Right.
section to a vote.
Exactly.
Well, that's what I'm
So
saying.
then that's what this committee can do, then we'll get you all of that information and
Well,
moving towards the
as-
fall.
As we
Or
get
whenever.
the next, we get the next statement of affairs, which should be coming out in for 12/13, should be October, November, December from your auditor.
But that puts it past the March ballot date.
We understand that.
So-
I
so-
think I've been on record as being a March person. I mean,
Yeah,
believe me,
no, so.
I spoke for it.
And I respect
But
that.
what
My point
he's-
is, we need to
right.
vote on, do it in the fall, and then our business is
Then
kind
you
of
can get you
done.
all that
till we can
information,
work that
and if
out.
you feel that maybe the tax rate wouldn't be accurate, but I can
Well, you know this
guarantee
stuff
you
better
that.
than anybody.
Exactly.
I grant you that by a lot, so.
Well,
My checkbook doesn't balance, so.
I
But
would
we
ask-
aren't holding information back, we are, I'll have our auditors at one of the committee meetings, if that would help. But I think still it doesn't negate whatever if you're gonna vote in spring or fall.
Well-
So, guys, what do you think?
I think that three of us have indicated we'd like to see the vote postponed on the financial committee. Even though we didn't meet as a committee, we met one-on-one. Until we can re-examine this, re-examine these finances.
What-
To decide
To
what.
decide what?
To see if we need to change the tax rate,
Well, we would have time to do that between now and November.
yes.
So now we just need to vote.
Right, you need to
March,
vote whether it's
November.
March or November.
I guess that would be my question. If we vote for November,
Mhm.
are we voting to leave things as they are?
No, I think the committee would have to
Everything would have
come back.
to be
Well,
re-looked at, correct?
re-looked at.
Anyway.
Anyway,
I think we should
so
vote.
we'll give you every document we have, we'll have our
Because the
auditor
budget's
come
gonna
in,
be for
we'll
next year,
have,
not this year.
because it's not going to, yes.
Right.
Are we
And if things
mixing
change.
the issue with two things?
Yes.
The question is, March or not?
Right,
Correct.
March or not,
I don't think I would
Yeah.
do March or November. I think it's-
just, are we
So
going to
I
go to
I would
March or
recommend
not?
we vote March or no March.
Right,
Nothing.
that's what the vote would be, and then we can go forward. Okay, so, and we'll get you any and all information.
So the vote now is for March.
Yeah,
That's the
we'll-
official
it
vote.
will
It's a
be
yes or
placed
no
on the
vote.
ballot in March.
We're voting yes or no.
Not a win. A yes or no, not a win.
Correct, not a win, a yes or a no for March.
Okay,
But but it's gonna have to be after that, which,
right.
if it's not March, it's gonna have to be.
It would be, yeah, if it goes forward, then it would be November, if you get all the information the committee does to feel comfortable with it at that time. So I guess the vote would be, out there, would you be placing this on the March ballot? And you want to,
You know,
No.
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 No,
No.
no,
okay. And we'll be glad to provide you with anything you need on the finance committee. So I would say if people are still interested in being on the committee, I don't know from our board's perspective, I won't speak for them, but I would say it would still be a standing committee if we feel we're gonna try to move forward. And the finance committee may, list some things they would like to see, and we'll be glad.
Is there a legality side of things about what the committee does at this point now? I mean, our mission was,
Right.
I was asked that a week ago, I guess, what happens if this doesn't proceed, and I had called our attorney, and he said that there's nothing in statute that really addresses it. So it's kind of, I guess there's two options. We could officially disband the committee, because the committee was formed to look at putting on the March ballot. So I guess we could do that. We could keep the committee and use it as an exploratory committee to continue, because I know there's still some issues that, it's not petition items, but there's still some issues that we know have not been addressed. We've known that all the way along. So it could continue as an exploratory committee to do that. Obviously, we might want to go back and look at finances again. So we could keep it as kind of that type of committee.
Yeah, I think our board would be willing to keep, if people are interested, because you've done a lot of groundwork, you've looked at it, if we're looking at going towards November or whatever, I would think it would be a good idea to do. Certain committee members may say they have other obligations or whatever.
I think we can either continue or we
Right.
can stop, whichever way.
would it then be up to this committee or the boards to decide which ballot it has to go on?
It is,
Well, if you have a committee.
the way I understand this, the boards, there's two ways to put it on the ballot. The easiest and most common and most efficient way is for the two boards of education to do. The other way is a petition of 50 voters from each district, and actually you can do a combination. There's one right now that's going on the ballot that the board in one district is filing it, and a petition of 50 voters in the other district is filing it. according to our attorney, I don't know if you've called and checked, because I know that question's come up before. He said the easiest, most efficient way is if the boards file a petition. But it can be done by a committee of voters.
Oh.
But at that point in time, if you have a committee of 10, their names do go on that petition.
Whoever
so-
files the petition actually names, yeah.
The committee
yeah.
of 10. So we're confusing, the boards actually put it on
Yeah.
eventually. But
The boards would
you will
have
have
to
a
vote
committee of
to
10.
put it on the ballot.
Make
Right.
certain
That's
decisions.
strictly up to the board.
So the committee recommendation so far carries forward until such time as it's amended, but our recommendation is that we proceed with consolidation, just not on one ballot.
And the committee, if they stay standing, we can dig into these facts that Mr. Brinkerhoff brought up, and we'll be glad to do so.
Another thing I'd like to say is I'd like for a lot of the personal attacks that are going around the community to stop. Don't appreciate things I'm hearing about both of the superintendents. I feel like they're basically trying to do their job. They've tried to represent, you know, their districts. There's a lot of false facts that are going around. I would suggest that you try to find a source to some of the things that are being said, because I think once you find out the source and do a little more checking, you're gonna find out there's a lot of things that are false.